afternoon, and when we talked about what we might do these few days, this theme of how we've got stuff in our Baptist tradition, in our Baptist DNA, that might be just the stuff we need for ministry and mission today, recommended itself to us. And that's kind of where we're going. And we might not have found the perfect titles, but that's kind of the thing. And one of the things we find all across the place is different groups of Baptists. Some of you may know of Curtis Freeman, heads up the Baptist House at Duke University in the States, and Curtis wrote a book a few years ago called Contesting Catholicity, and the subtitle was Theology for Other Baptists. And he talks about, and of course in the States, big, he talks about filling in some form, and it's online, and it says religion, and he clicks Baptist, and a second box opens, and it says, are you Southern Baptist? Are you American Baptist? Are you National Baptist? Are you? And Curtis said he scrolls down through about 20 of these, and at the bottom it says Other Baptist. And he said, I had a moment of realising who I really was. And it struck me we're not very far from where George Fox, who founded the Society of Friends, used to minister, and the Quakers. And in his journal, he talks at one point about discovering a society of shattered Baptists. And every so often I come back to that and think, yeah, I can find myself there. And maybe when you come away to an event like this, inevitably you come leaving stuff that really matters. You come with concerns for your church, for your family, for yourself. You come with all sorts of worries and needs, and probably you come with a degree of a sense of feeling shattered. And I hope in worship we've already begun to find some renewal, but I hope we can find more through the sessions, through the quiet times we've got, through perhaps particularly through sharing the Eucharist together on the last morning. Because this is for you. This is for you to be renewed, fed, strengthened, re-envisioned, so you can go back to the places God has called you and do the work that God has called you to. We'll kind of be workshop style tomorrow, but this evening, now, I just, if you'll let me, would just like to preach to you. And text is Revelation 1, verse 12 to 2, verse 7. Then I turned to see whose voice it was that spoke to me. And on turning, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And in the midst of the lampstands, I saw one like the Son of Man, clothed with a long robe and with a golden sash across his chest. His head and his hair were white as white wool, white as snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire. His feet were like burnished bronze, refined as in a furnace. And his voice was like the sound of many waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars. And from his mouth came a sharp 2-edged sword. And his face was like the sun, shining with full force. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. But he placed his right hand on me, saying, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last, and the living one. I was dead. And see, now I am alive forever and ever. And I have the keys of death and Hades. Now, write what you have seen, what is, and what is to take place after this. As for the mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, And the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. To the angel of the church of Ephesus, write, these are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks among the 7 golden lampstands. I know your works, your toil, your patient endurance. I know that you cannot tolerate evildoers. You have tested those who claim to be apostles and are not, and have found them to be false. I also know that you are enduring patiently and bearing up for the sake of my name, and that you have not grown weary. But I have this against you, that you have abandoned the love you had at first. Remember from what you have fallen, repent, and do the works you did at first. If not, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place unless you repent. But this is to your credit, you hate the works of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. Let anyone who has an ear listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. To everyone who conquers, I will give permission to eat from the tree of life that is in the paradise of God. We give thanks, Lord, for your word, and pray that you will apply it to our hearts. So our focus for these days is on Baptist identity, and Revelation might not seem the obvious place to go to start. I seem to keep ending up in Revelation. I'm supposed to be writing a paper for an academic conference on prayer. The topic they gave me, theology of prayer, and I've written about 8,000 words of exegesis on Revelation, which, given the paper's supposed to be 6,000 words, and I haven't really got there yet. Well, I've got time. But Revelation might not seem the obvious place to start. It's very little to say about baptism or about church meeting, which, of course, are the distinctives we tend to point to when we're talking about what it is to be Baptist. But I think they're both responses to something more basic. And I think Revelation, these first 2 chapters, highlight well. The best known bits of Revelation, I suppose, are the vision of the throne room of heaven in verses 4 and 5, a powerful vision of worship which you can enter into and enjoy before the weird stuff kicks in. Sam led us in. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I do remember when we preached through Revelation a few years back in our church in St Andrews. Once someone stood up and she gave the reading and she read it really well, and it must have been chapter 11 or 12 or something. And she finished, and she turned to the preacher, and instead of "this is the word of the Lord," she said, "Good luck with that." God is on the throne in those chapters, reigning over all the strange troubles of history. Jesus, the Lamb who has been slain, can open the scroll and so holds the key to bringing God's reign to pass in history. It's powerful and it's comforting and it's deservedly well known. And in the times that we're in, trusting that God is on the throne, that the course of history is in Jesus' hands, really matters. If we can't hold on to these truths, then the temptation to despair will overwhelm us. But that is the second vision of Revelation. And the first also matters. Jesus here, risen, glorified, reigning, majestic. Jesus revealed in all his majesty and power. Jesus fulfilling Daniel's vision of one who would come like a son of man and hold all the keys of history in his hand. Jesus surpassing Daniel's vision, holding even the keys of death and Hades in his hand. Jesus shining, glowing with glory. Jesus commanding all creation with his voice. Jesus holding 7 stars, standing amongst 7 lampstands, face shining in brilliance. Jesus. John falls on his face. He's going to be doing that quite a bit in Revelation before various angels and messengers, and they're each going to tell him to get up because only God deserves worship. Jesus doesn't tell him to get up. Jesus accepts his worship because only God deserves worship. Reaches out, touches John. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I am the first and the last. The living one, dead, yes, once dead, but now alive forever and ever, holding the keys of death and Hades, right, as the voice said, right. And then the mystery of the 7 lampstands. They are the 7 churches. The mystery of the 7 stars. They are the angels of the church. 7 churches facing trouble internally, as we read in the letters of chapters 2 and 3, we already heard in the one of Ephesus, and externally, threatened by errors and divisions, and by persecution and oppression. 7 churches struggling, each in their own way, or in many ways. 7 churches, feeble, failing, fragile. Where is Jesus? Later in Revelation, yes, we will see him seated on the throne of heaven. But not now. Now he stands in the middle of the lampstands, amongst the churches, in the middle of failing and fallen and feeble communities. Jesus is there, walking from one to another. 7 churches, feeble yet, failing, fragile. 7 churches, defended by one fierce and faithful Lord. 7 churches defended by one champion who will never be defeated, who will never be seriously challenged. Chaos and confusion may rage. King Jesus laughs. They are impotent against him. Revelation will come towards its end when in chapter 20 we read of Satan being freed and going across the whole earth and gathering an army that's so numerous it's like the sands on the seesaw, and marching against the city of God, which is imagined as a camp with perhaps a single wire marking its fence, and you've got the greatest army the world's ever seen, and God's people there with no defence. And of course there's only one outcome. Don't even need to pick up a weapon. Fire falls from heaven and devours the army. King Jesus laughs. They are impotent against him. I know the brokenness, the fragility of my church. Last Sunday I was with friends down in Bedford, very long-standing friends. I knew in university. I was best man at his wedding. I had the privilege of preaching at, that was about 30 years ago. I had the privilege of preaching at her ordination about 5 years ago, and she was telling me of the church that she's now called to, and horrific, astonishing problems that they were facing there, the brokenness, the fragility. Every one of our churches, we can talk about the good things, and sometimes in a meeting like this, that's all we do. Oh yeah, this happened, that happened. Oh yeah. But we all know, amongst the good things, there's the brokenness, there's the fragility. We've been called by our King Jesus to love and to serve and to prosper and to grow these communities. We have to be concerned. We have to be careful. We have to care. But the one who walks among the churches is strong enough to defend them and tender enough to hold them unharmed and loving enough to see them flourish. I see 141 lampstands. I hear a voice saying that these are the 141 churches of the East Midlands Baptist Association. And I see Jesus walking among them, tending them, caring for them, face shining, clothes glowing, feet blazing, almighty in power, unending in love, speaking protection and peace and prosperity over the churches, over your churches, with a voice that rolls as powerful and as inexorable as the 4-foot vestry back in my home. We can never despair. We can never lose hope. His ancient promise holds true. He will not break a bruised reed, nor quench a flickering wick. And so the lampstands I see are each strong, straight, tall, blazing with light, unbent, unbroken, unextinguished, golden, protected, and precious. Revelation is all about looking behind appearance to see reality. That is the reality of your church. That is the reality of your church. I sometimes get just a little annoyed at the way people use the word real. What about the real world? It tends to mean one of two things. It tends to mean money, which is about the least real thing you can imagine. What is it? Digits in a computer system somewhere. Or it means the place where suffering happens most, or something like that. No. No, the real world is the world as Jesus called it to be. The closest we ever get to the real world is in the scriptures, around the communion table, in the baptismal pool. Jesus walks among your churches, and so your lampstands are strong, straight, tall, blazing with light, unbent, unbroken, unextinguished, golden, protected, and precious. We can never despair. We can never lose hope, because we see Jesus with us, present amongst us, walking among the lampstands with stars in his right hand. I have to practice that. I'm left-handed. I'm very left-handed. My wife complains occasionally when I'm in the kitchen that I'm trying to do everything with one hand. Stars in his right hand. The 7 stars. The mystery of the 7 stars. They're the angels. The messengers, the teachers, the preachers, the evangelists, the leaders of the churches. You are the stars. Not in some irrelevant modern sense of celebrity. I was speaking of something on Saturday, and a wonderful woman leader, Bev Morrill, some of you may have tripped over Bev. If anyone's ministry deserves the name apostolic, she's certainly one of them. And she prayed over all of us at the end for the blessing of being obscure, that our names would not be known, our ministries might be fruitful, but our names would not be known. Yeah, we don't mean stars like that. We mean the stars, the angels, the messengers, the preachers, the teachers, the evangelists, the leaders, that King Jesus carries in his right hand. Yes, he walks among the churches, but he holds close the leaders. You are held. You are cherished, jealously protected, grasped, cradled in the hand that shaped the hills. Cradled in the hand that bore the nails. Whatever troubles you carry, whatever guilt bears you down, whatever problems you shoulder, King Jesus carries you in his right hand. If you're bowed, if you're bent, if you're forced to your knees, you will only nestle closer in that almighty hand that is marked still with the scars of what he did out of love for you, for your church, for his world. When your knees buckle, you can take shelter in that scar, that cleft rock which no storm can ever shake, which no burden can ever press down. King Jesus carries you in his scarred right hand. Yes, Revelation's going to go on to tell us of all the powers of sin and death and hell warring against the church, of the sea of chaos foaming and raging and spewing forth impossible beasts. And they are impossible. I confess I've not checked to see if it's still there, but a few years ago when I was looking for something completely different, I stumbled across a website that was photos of some American guy who decided to build models of the beasts in his back garden. And one of the things he discovered was the crowns and the horns just don't work. So there was one of the models of the beast was there, and it kind of got 7 horns, and there was a crown on each horn, and there were 3 more crowns on the fence post next to it because he couldn't work out where to put them. Impossible beasts, Satan unbound, stalking the earth, persecutions and perils of the saints. Revelation's going to tell us all about that. It will paint stark, honest pictures of the true horrors of the battle we face. But right here, at the start, King Jesus, walking among the churches, King Jesus, carrying you, in his right hand. We will face many battles, many troubles. There will be times when we wonder if we can cope. Remember once, this is over 20 years ago, in church, I was part of the leadership team, and I just had to dismiss our pastor for the reasons we typically do. And not long after that, couple arrived, and they just moved into the town, and they came in, young couple, and said, we're doing the tour, and they stayed with us, came to the service, and then said, we're going to try some other churches, and so you went to see us for a few weeks, and then they came back saying, this is the best church in the town, we reckon. I kind of wanted to give up. If we get at that point with the best church in town, then really the gospel was lost. And you know how that feels. You've been there, I'm sure you. But even then, perhaps especially then, Jesus was tending our hand. Jesus was holding those who were trying to lead in his right hand. I don't know what your future holds, but I do know that your King Jesus holds you. So take courage. Be encouraged. Take courage, because whatever you face, you do not face it alone. Be encouraged, because whatever you do may be unseen on earth, but it's seen and known and rejoiced over in heaven. Whenever a refugee finds a home, Whenever someone homeless finds a bed, whenever someone hungry is fed, whenever someone mourning is comforted, whenever someone broken is healed, whenever justice is confronted, evil is overcome, whenever supremely a sinner finds forgiveness and freedom in the gospel, even if unseen on earth, it is seen and known and rejoiced over and parted about in heaven. And that is what you are about. Whenever a church gropes, however imperfectly, after the call of King Jesus, even if unseen on earth, it is rejoiced over in heaven. Whenever a pastor seeks to love and to serve and to apply the gospel to challenge or comfort or uplift, even if unseen on earth, it is rejoiced over in heaven. And I know how hard that can be sometimes. I know the people who say, well, what do you do all week? When what you've done all week is stood with one of your young people who is in trouble with the police without drugs. Can't tell anyone. But it was the vital ministry of the man. When what you've done all week is wrestled in prayer over something that no one else knows about. When what you've done all week is gone back to the scriptures because this sermon series feels like it matters and you don't quite know where to take it. Even if unseen on earth, it is rejoiced over in heaven. We are feeble, fragile, failing. We are defended by one fierce and faithful Lord who walks, blazing eyes and burnished feet and face shining like the sun, amongst the lampstands, amongst the churches, holding the stars, the pastors, the leaders, holding close in his right hand. And then chapter 2, the letters to the churches. King Jesus speaks directly to each church. I know, he says. Jesus says, I know. I know you. I know the struggles you face. I know the problems you cannot solve. I know the opposition, the challenges, the possibilities. I know you. To each local church, Jesus said, I know you. I know you. I know you. Yes, there is comfort in the second vision of Revelation of God's reign over all. But in this first vision, where Jesus walks amongst his churches, speaks to each one of them, intimately aware of their struggles and challenges. Isn't there more comfort here? To know that our King Jesus is close to us, knows what we face and what we struggle with, offers us command and counsel, offers us hope and promise. And this, coming back to where we started finally, this I want to suggest to you is the heart of our Baptist vision. Our King Jesus reigns, but not in some abstract sense, seated on a throne far away. Not in some mediated sense, sending popes and bishops and whatever to tell others what to do. He reigns actively, he reigns closely, he walks among his churches, he speaks to us by name. We have church meetings because it's a privilege to come together to hear the sovereign call of our King Jesus. He is not far away, but walking amongst his churches, from Ephesus to Smyrna, from Scunthorpe to Hinckley. Jesus is there, here, close, speaking, guiding, if necessary, rebuking and leading us to repentance. As Baptists, we try to live this. King Jesus is present and active and reigning, and no one but him can tell us what to do. And so we gather in church meeting to hear his voice and to commit together to walk in his ways, known and to be made known, as the old phrase had it. This is very, very unusual amongst Christian traditions. I occasionally have the privilege, and generally it is a privilege, of doing some ecumenical stuff. I'm part of the Baptist delegation talking to a delegation from a different church, and I've done UK stuff. I'm involved in some European stuff now. I've once done stuff with the Baptist World Alliance, so we had to go to Jamaica for a week. Suffering for Jesus yet again. But one of the conversations that always happens in those in those meetings is at some point we get to, and I remember once talking to the Church of England again years ago, and it was about year 3, and someone actually understood for the first time what we were saying, and because it was the Church of England, his way of expressing this was, you mean we couldn't just add the Baptist Union of Great Britain to Canon B3, wasn't B3, but whatever it was, where we list all our ecumenical partners, we'd have to add every single Baptist church. So we said, no, just the ones that wanted to be partners with you. Didn't help. But that's when Jesus speaks directly to the church in Ephesus, to the church in Laodicea, to the church in Smyrna. That is a pattern that we believe and try to live. And so Jesus speaks directly to the church in Melton Mowbray, to the church in Derby, to the church in Cornwall. We baptize believers only because we believe that our King Jesus is close to each one of us, calling us as individuals, not just as churches, to repent and believe the good news. And so we ask everyone, however dependent or insignificant they may be in the eyes of the world, to own him for themselves. I'm writing something with, I think he used to be in this area actually, Ruth Moriarty, minister in London now, maybe I'm wrong. She's just finished her doctorate on, she did a kind of ethnographic study of Baptist church meetings. I've written bits about theology, and someone said, could we do a paper on church meetings, which, on the one hand, I get on well with Ruth, I'm going to enjoy writing with her. I think that we bring different perspectives that work well together, but more, we're going to publish a paper that's going to be called Holmes and Moriarty. And when I've written about church meetings and looking at Ruth's observation of what actually happens in Baptist church meetings, I worry sometimes that we can get misled. The first Baptist church ever to put a ballot paper in the hands of its members when it was calling a minister. In London, about 1820, just about the time what was called the Great Reform Act was going through the Westminster Parliament down the road. The Great Reform Act, it did some good things, eliminating the rotten boroughs where there was only one voter, essentially what it did was extend the franchise, extend the definition of who could vote from roughly the richest 5% of male landowners in the country to roughly the richest 10% of male landowners in the country. And in the shadow almost of the Palace of Westminster, there was a Baptist church handing out ballot papers, male or female, landowning or not, in service, still at school possibly. That was prophetic. That was astonishingly powerful. That spoke truth. And now, of course, we all do it. But I worry that it says something different because we're so used to democracy. I know how to use a ballot paper. I've been very well schooled in that by my culture. You pick the person who you think is going to make your life better, and you vote selfishly for them. And so we're already coming into a very tedious few months with lots of people promising us lots of things. Or even if we can't quite promise it yet, we'll say we're the sort of people who really do want to cut taxes as soon as we can. You know the stuff. In church meeting, every one of us comes to gather together and to hear together the voice of Jesus. And that's what we're trying to do. Last time when we called our current senior pastor in St Andrews, a great guy called Abby Mgunga, he was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo, found his way to St Andrews eventually. It was, I remember the church meeting, and I'd been on the search committee, and I'd been presenting why we thought we should call him, and our church, for reasons to do with problems not that long ago, presently insists on a 90% call. As the meeting started, I heard people uncertain. Do you really need a pastor who had been born in Africa? There were comments about his accent, which I didn't find very convincing. I mean, we have people who, in the preaching team, who have Texan accents, English accents, Dutch accents, Glaswegian accents. Some of us even have English accents. And because of this high call, I thought, this isn't happening, this isn't going to go. And then he was sitting right in front of me, actually. I didn't film him or anything, but this kid stood up, 14. And someone had said something about a minister who will appeal to, or who will be understood by, or some phrase like this, the young people. And he felt he had to say something. As a young person who was present in the meeting, not actually a member at that point, not officially according to the Constitution. The Holy Spirit had other ideas. And he didn't say anything at all clever. And he stuttered a bit as he said it. But somehow that intervention changed the meeting. We called Abby with no votes against, or was it one vote against? Anyway, whatever it was. That's what we mean when we say church meeting. Everyone. In a room. And at St Andrews church meetings, it's a fairly high-powered room in certain parts. There's there's a guy at the back who used to be president of the Royal Society, which, you know, I guess I'm a bit daunting for some people, and I get worried because there's kind of 5 of my colleagues who teach biblical studies in the university sitting there, and you know, when I remember when we preached through Hebrews, a wonderful guy, you ought to get him actually, David Moffat, American, he's probably in the top 3 in the world on Hebrews at the moment. And so each time came my turn to preach, I kind of spent 3 times as long. just making sure, you know. I asked him once when he was preaching how much time he put into prepare for a sermon on Hebrews, and he smiled and said, I get up half an hour early that morning. So you know, then I think it is a fairly high-powered church meeting in worldly terms, but God chose the voice of a 14-year-old for us to hear what Jesus was calling us to. However dependent, insignificant they may be in the eyes of the world, King Jesus knows them. Calls them by name, calls them individually, personally, to follow him. And so to be baptized. This, at heart, I suggest to you, is our Baptist vision. King Jesus walks amongst, tends, cares for your lampstand, your churches. He is close. He will support. He will challenge. He will stretch. But he is close. He knows your struggles. He knows your problems. He speaks, not just in general, but to the angel of the church in Skegness, in Leicester, in the place, your church. King Jesus speaks directly to you. You are known. You are loved. You are visited by King Jesus. The one who alone has the right to sit on the throne of heaven chooses not, but to walk amongst your churches. The one who alone has the right to hold the scepter and the orb chooses not, but instead to hold you in his right hand. We can never despair.